Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the first Catalyst webinar series of the 2020 year. Welcome, welcome, welcome. The Catalyst webinar series is a bi-weekly educational platform for creating success and change in your club and career. The timing is right, very, very relevant to have Jeremy Pitt on this morning from the SCGA. Mr. Pitt has been the Director of Club Services for the SCGA going on 12 years now, and he'll be presenting this morning, bringing us up to speed on the World Handicap System and all of that that's been going on here over the last month. We actually had Jeremy out here at Monterey in December presenting to our membership on the World Handicap System and the changes that are coming down with that. Good morning, Mr. Pitt. Welcome to the Catalyst webinar series.
Thank you, John. Appreciate it. Thank you, everybody, for attending today. And yeah, so as of January 1st, 2020, the USGA and the RNA have implemented now what's the rules of handicapping and the World Handicap System. So there are quite a few changes which we'll go through today. I believe John is going to be looking at questions as they come in throughout the presentation, and we'll answer those questions as they come in. But we'll go ahead and get started. So again, January 1st of this year, the USGA has implemented a new World Handicap System. And what they wanted to do was create an easier way for golfers to obtain and maintain a handicap index within the new system, as well as for it to be able to travel around the world. So in this next slide, you're going to see we had, well, not this next slide, we had 6 different countries that were on 6 different systems. And now all of those countries are under one system. So if golfers go to Ireland, they're able to post their score to their GIN number. And again, that handicap is now universal and can travel from country to country. So to go over a few key definitions, as you'll hear throughout the presentation, we have what's called a low handicap index. In Southern California, this is not a new concept, but around the world it is. So we've pushed for having a low handicap index, which the USGA has given the Southern California Golf Association. But that hasn't been true for other associations, even in the U.S. or around the world. So it's the low handicap within the last 12 months, and we'll show why that's relevant moving forward. We do have what's called a hard and soft cap, and these are measures to restrict upward movement or limit upward movement of a handicap index, and we'll go over those as we go throughout the presentation. There is what's called a playing conditions calculation, which is an automatic calculation that may adjust one's differential for that score posted that day, depending on course conditions or even how the course setup may be. If the course setup is harder, you might see an adjustment based on scores that are posted, and we'll go through that as well. What's called an exceptional score reduction. This is taking place of that R that people used to get behind their index, which was for a reduction based off of exceptional tournament scores. That no longer is the case. What could happen is that a member's or a golfer's index could be reduced based off of an exceptional score. That exceptional score does not need to be a tournament score. It could be any score. And we'll show the details of how that works as well. Net double bogey, I believe this is probably the most proactive change that a golfer will need to be aware of on a day-to-day basis when they play golf. It's taking the place of what's called the equitable stroke chart that players used to adjust scores before posting based on that chart. If somebody was a 14 course handicap, they would not be able to accept any more than a 7 on any given hole. This net double bogey is the new concept. So the max score for a golfer is net double bogey which is double bogey plus any strokes that they may incur handicap-wise on that hole, basically known as pops on that hole. So, and we'll talk more in detail about net double bogey as well. Net par is not a new concept, just a new definition. Basically, when a hole is not played or if a hole is skipped, not started, so a golfer does not even start the play of the hole, they can still take what's called net par for that hole for posting purposes. All right, so a course handicap, the definition is basically the number of strokes a player receives to shoot to par. The formula is very similar. There's just one addition to it. It's the handicap index multiplied by the slope rating of the tees being played at that course, divided by the USGA standard slope of 113. This course rating minus par calculation is what's new. So a course handicap, as you've probably seen on a lot of your members or a lot of golfers, course handicap from the tees they normally play has gone down. The reason being is because they are now taking the course rating minus par into the calculation. So if you look at somebody's course rating from a set of tees, that's 69.5 course rating and the par is 72. Basically, that golfer is now seeing 3 less handicap strokes on their course handicap. So it's across the board, it's universal, all sets of tees. And if one player's in course handicap has gone down, so has the next golfers. So it's universal. This is now eliminating the need to adjust when 2 golfers are playing from separate tees. So if you've got somebody playing from the blue tees and somebody playing from the white tees, usually you would get the course handicap, and then you would make an adjustment off of course rating as well because they're playing from separate tees. Now that this course rating and par calculation is in the course handicap itself, there's no more need to make an additional adjustment off of the course rating. So whatever a player is course handicap wise from the blue tees and whatever golfer B is from the white tees, that is their course handicap, and that's what they're going to play to that day. So if we just kind of look at the comparison of course handicaps, in the USGA old system, you had course handicaps and target scores based off of the sets of tees that you were playing. And for this player with a handicap index of 15, you can see that their course handicap from the different sets of tees didn't change. And their target score did based off of those ratings. With the new system, as golfers kind of relate to par more as how they did during the day and compare their score against par, you can see now that the course handicap does change, which makes a little bit more sense in that the black tees are a lot harder than the gold tees, so why would they get the same amount of strokes? You can see now the course handicap differs, but the target score is still the same based off of that course handicap. So it's a little bit easier for the golfer to connect the dots on how well they did that round versus par. Now the playing handicap, just a little bit different. It's basically an allowance that is given to a player in a competition. So people would take their course handicap, and based off of the format that they're playing, they might get only, let's say, 85% of their course handicap, which is now called the playing handicap. So when a course handicap is adjusted for a competition, it's now referred to as a playing handicap, and you can see the formula here. It's just the course handicap multiplied by any handicap allowance for that specific event. You can see on the right there, a 15, 85% of a 15 course handicap brought that playing handicap down to a 13 for that player in, let's say, a 4-ball net event. So a couple of changes for the golfer, the new golfer that is. So in following the form of obtaining a handicap index, making it easier for a golfer to obtain a handicap index, you don't need to have 5 scores to obtain a handicap index posted. Now you only need 3. So golfers can establish an index with lower amounts of holes played. So 3 18-hole rounds or a combination of 6 9-hole rounds, and that player would have an index the following day. There's no time limit to submit those scores. That's not a change. Another big change, before we had the handicap index limit for men as 36.4, and for women it was 40.4. Now the maximum handicap index is 54.0 for both men and women. So you've got a lot of golfers that were maxed at their, let's say for women 40.4, and their index wouldn't go any higher, so they weren't able to really track their handicap index at all. So now this is again making it more inclusive and allows a lot of those newer golfers to be able to track their index as that threshold has increased. So again, I come back to the most proactive thing a golfer is going to have to be aware of on a daily basis, and that's the net double bogey. Again, no more equitable stroke charts. Everything's based off of net double bogey. So a player's maximum on any given hole is double bogey plus any handicap strokes that they might have received on that hole. So just a quick example, pretty easy. Course handicap for this player was 18. Pretty easy to see that they're going to receive 1 stroke on every hole. They've got their tournament scores listed here on the scorecard. You can see on 17 they took an 8. For posting purposes, they need to adjust that to a net double bogey, which would be a 7, not an 8. So for the tournament, their score of 95 stands, but when they go to post that score, the adjustment needs to be made on 17, and they do not post the 95, they post the 94 for that round based off of the net double bogey maximum. If they were in a competition and their course handicap of 18 was reduced down to a 15, maybe this is a 4-ball event and they don't get the full course handicap, so their playing handicap is 15, they would still adjust off of the course handicap, not the playing handicap. So they still get the full 18 strokes in relation to posting this round. So what the USGA has in place is hole-by-hole score posting options, and these are offered both online and on the GIN app, as well as through the posting computer kiosk at the course. If a player selects that they'd like to post their score hole by hole, they don't need to adjust those scores prior to entering the hole by hole. The system automatically adjusts those scores itself automatically. So you can see there on hole 2, they enter the hole 7 based off of their course handicap and the tees that they're posting to. It was automatically adjusted down to 5. So for those golfers that may not grasp the net double bogey concept or don't want to worry about adjusting themselves, tell your members, tell those golfers, post your score hole by hole and you don't have to worry about the net double bogey adjusting. The system will do it for them. Okay, so again, for a hole not played, the golfers can still post a eligible round by using the net par concept. So if a player stops due to darkness on 16, they would post net par for holes 17 and 18 and still be able to have a postable 18-hole score. And net par is basically par plus any handicap strokes that player would receive on that hole. Maybe the course has some maintenance on a specific hole and that hole's not in play. Again, they can still post that round even though they played 17 holes, and for that 18th hole that they skipped, they could post net par. 9-hole rounds are postable scores. They have been in the past, and they will continue in the future to be postable rounds. They will combine to form an 18-hole differential in that player's score file. So once 2 9-hole scores are posted, they will combine automatically and form an 18-hole round, which will be identified with the letter N on the score file. So if a player plays 7 holes and stops, they can still post that round as a 9-hole score. You can see here that the 13 is in red. So if they played 13 holes, it would only be a 9-hole round posting. Before, if somebody played 13 holes, they would be able to post that round as an 18-hole round. Now, for an 18-hole round, you must play 14 holes at a minimum to be eligible to post that round as an 18-hole round. So again, if a player plays 7 to 13 holes, they would post that round as a 9-hole round. And again, if they played 7, they would use net par for 8 and 9 and post. So a quick update on some of the changes to the handicap index itself. No longer are we on the 1st and 15th revision schedules. We are on daily revisions. So every day a player plays golf, when they post that round that day, that round could affect their index the following day, as we are on a daily update. It's important that golfers get their round posted the day of. We'll talk more about that, but it really relates to the fact that A, their index changes daily, but also if there's any playing conditions, calculations involved or adjustments involved, they want to make sure they post it to that day so that those calculations and those adjustments can hit their differential for that day. And again, it'll update the day after as long as they get that score posted before midnight local time, so Pacific Standard Time for Southern California. So 5 significant changes to the index calculation. We've talked about minimum scores. All they need is 3 18-hole rounds to establish an index. No longer are we using 10 of the 20, 10 best differentials of the 20. Now it's only 8 that are being used of a full score file of 20 to calculate that index. There's a new playing conditions calculation that may affect one's differential for that day. We also have the exceptional score reductions in place and the hard and soft cap that may limit the upward movement of one's index. And we'll talk about all 5 of these briefly in detail here. So 20 scores, 8 rounds are going to be used, 8 differentials are going to be used to establish that index. So it used to be 10 with a bonus of excellence calculation. They used to take 96% of that, 0.96 of the 10. Now it's straight 8 of the low 20 with no other additional adjustments made. So whatever their 8 lowest differentials are, that average is going to be what their index is, rounded to the nearest tenth. So to calculate a score differential, nothing has changed except for one item. You still have the adjusted gross score. You subtract the course rating from the tees being played, and then you subtract what may or may not be a playing conditions calculation for that round. You multiply that by the standard 113 USGA slope and the slope rating of the tees being played. That's how a differential is calculated for each round that's posted. So just to show, a lot of golfers think that their lowest score is their best round, but based off of the tees that they play that day, you know, they could shoot a higher round in their score file at a harder course, and their differential is going to be lower based off of the higher course rating. So, you know, just a quick reminder to a lot of golfers, to those folks, that their lowest score in their file may not be their best. They could have a higher score that equates to a lower differential that's used for their handicap index calculation. So the playing conditions calculation, this is one of those big changes that has been implemented into the system. Basically, based off of the scores that are submitted that day, if they're abnormally higher or lower than what the average score is from that course, the system will automatically kick in what's called the playing conditions calculation and adjust those players' differentials accordingly. It's going to be simple and conservative, and you will only see adjustments made by 1, 2, or 3. So you won't see a huge adjustment of 5 or 6 on one's differential. The highest you'll see is a +3 or -3 adjustment. So again, in Southern California, I don't see this happening all too often, maybe on some windier days. But again, it's going to be very conservative, very simple, and in Southern California, where we have pretty good weather, I'm not seeing that happen all too frequently in the future. But this does go to the importance of posting the day of. So it's real important that when golfers play, they play the day of, because obviously this playing conditions calculation is performed once a day. So if you have a golf course and everybody submits those scores, the adjustments are going to be made for all of those scores for that day that were posted. So it includes, for the playing conditions calculation to kick in, it includes all scores from that course, from that day, from all sets of tees, from both genders, but it does require at least 8 scores be posted at that course from players with a handicap index of 36.0 or below. So if a player does post for that day, that score will be in the calculation itself. It will be considered as part of the calculation. So if a player plays today and there is a PCC adjustment, but they don't post until tomorrow, when they post tomorrow, they want to make sure that they date that posting for today's date, as that's where the playing conditions calculation kicked in. If they post tomorrow, they'll never see any adjustment made, if there was one, in fact, made for PCC. And again, it accepts all scores from that course, from all sets of tees, and it includes both 9 and 18 hole rounds. And regardless of when the score is posted, the PCC will impact that score differential as long as they get the date correct for the day that PC was established. Even though the score won't be calculated within the calculation itself, it won't be considered as part of the calculation of what the PCC adjustment is, they'll still get the adjustment, whatever that adjustment was, as long as they post for that correct date. Exceptional score reduction. I think this is a great a change. You know, before we had what's called the exceptional tournament score, which may implement a reduction of one's index based on how well they played in a tournament. Moving forward, it doesn't matter if they play well in a tournament or just a casual round of golf with their buddies. They could have what's called an exceptional score reduction based off of how well they played. So how does it work? Basically, when their score is calculated and creates a differential, if that differential is 7 to 9.9 strokes below their current index, they're going to receive a 1 stroke adjustment downward to their index. And if they score, if their score differential is 10 or more, they'll receive a -2 adjustment on their handicap index. So my handicap index is 20.0, and I shoot a score that equates to a score differential of 12, I'm going to be considered for a 1 stroke reduction on my index. So my 20.0 index will automatically go down to a 19.0. Plus, with that exceptional score, it's going to go down even further because that score is now going to be used as the calculation for my index the following day. And if you look at an exceptional score, you're basically looking at, let's say, a course rating of 69.7 and slope of 130 for a set of tees. You know, that players are having to shoot net 61s, net 60s to be eligible for an exceptional score. So you can see that if somebody's shooting net 61, net 60, net 59, that's a pretty good score. And they should be reduced if their ability is showing that they could shoot such a low net score.
Hey, Jeremy, who determined PCC?
Okay, so PCC is an automatic adjustment. That's a good question. So based off of weather conditions, it's not like the weather station has to get involved. The club doesn't have to call the USGA and say, hey, it was blowing 40 miles an hour today. We might need an adjustment on the scores being posted. It's automatically done. So when you have your players posting scores, and let's say it is blowing 30 miles an hour and everybody shoots 5 strokes higher than what they normally shoot for their given handicap index and course rating, the system's going to automatically see, wow, all of the scores, or 95% of the scores, or whatever the calculation is, we don't even know what the calculation or algorithm is, but the system's going to automatically see that scores are higher, and it's going to say, hey, obviously something was up that day. We're going to make an adjustment to everybody's score because they were all higher than normal. So it's just an automatic adjustment based off of the scores posted that day. So a quick look at a score file here. You can see that there's a PCC column. That's the playing conditions calculation adjustment. If there is an adjustment, it will be listed on the player's score file. So if they see that their differential is lower than what normally is for an 87, they can see, oh wow, it was due to a PCC adjustment. Also, if they have an equitable, or if they have an exceptional score reduction based off of an exceptional score, see that 75 in there, that triggered an exceptional score reduction of this person's index. But you see there in the differential column, they've got a little asterisk there that identifies, hey, your differential has been adjusted based off of an exceptional score. So if they run their mouse over their score file, they'll be able to see why the adjustment was made and how much the adjustment was for.
Thanks, Jeremy.
Yes. So another great implementation that the World Handicap System has implemented is what's called the CAP procedure. So when golfers are shooting great scores and their handicap index is going down, we're not concerned about that. We congratulate them, tell them they're playing great golf, and keep going. But what we do worry and are concerned about are those indexes that start increasing rapidly on a person's score file. So what the soft cap and the hard cap do is they suppress and restrict upward movement of one's index based off of their low handicap index. So we go back to that low handicap index. It's not new for Southern California, but it's new for a lot of other associations and other countries around the world. And you can see that the low handicap index does now have a function moving forward other than just keeping your LI for the next 12 months. It is based off of high or soft and hard cap restrictions as well. It's the base of what that upward movement can be. So the soft cap will suppress upward movement by 50% after a 3-stroke increase of the low index. So the USGA, the RNA did some research. They said, hey, you know, from the low handicap, it's not rare that one's index fluctuate 3 points upward. That happens a lot. But after 3, it starts becoming a little bit more rare. So that's why they came up with the 3-stroke threshold above your LI. So once it gets to 3 or higher above your LI, it goes into a suppression calculation and only allows upward movement by 50%. And we'll show a little example there. The hard cap is just a straight restriction of 5 strokes higher than your low index over a 12-month period. So if your index was let's say 15, your low handicap index is 15.0, you'll never see your index go above 20 in a 12-month period. And again, this is for golfers with a full score file of 20. You can't establish a low index until you do have 20 scores in your file. That's what's considered a full score file, 20 scores, 18-hole scores. So real quick, the soft cap, an example, this player has a low index of 10.0, and based off of his current 8 of 20, his index is reflective of 15.2. Now we say, wow, 15.2, that's higher, that's 5 higher than 10, so there's no way you can be at 15.2. But the system goes into a suppression calculation prior to that straight restriction of 5. So how does the calculation work? Well, we've got the low index of 10. We know we can go up 3. That's within the threshold. Remember that 3 above the low index brings us to 13. And if you take their current index of 15.2 and subtract the threshold of what's now 13, the 10 LI, the 3-stroke threshold, that's the 13. We get a difference of 2.2. The suppression obviously kicks in. It says, okay, well, we're going to take 50% of whatever's higher than the above 3. So that 2.2, 50% of that is 1.1. So again, their threshold of 13, they can go up 3. So 10 LI plus 3 is 13. Now we're only taking 50% of what's higher than 13, which is 1.1. Their index is not going to be 15.2. It's going to be suppressed down to 14.1. And this is all done automatically through the system. The club doesn't have to do anything. The member's not going to have to do anything. The golfer will be aware of this on their score file, as it will identify that this has been capped at 14.1 based off of their low index. So I'm not going to go through a hard cap example. We just know that, hey, if their handicap index was 17.8 right now, they're going to be capped at 15.0 based off of their low index of 10.0, because that hard cap only allows 5 strokes higher than their LI in a 12-month period. So again, it's the system is just basically restricting indexes of upward movement to help maintain the equitability of golfers who may try to manipulate the system even, or have shown that in 12 months that they can shoot lower scores. So we're not going to allow them to have an index inflated up higher than 5. Real quick, as the handicap committee or the club, you do have the ability to adjust a member's index or a golfer's index. So again, we have those suppression, the soft and hard caps. But if a player, let's say, has an injury or is ill and just isn't playing and can't play down to what their current index is, the committee can adjust higher than that 5 threshold. So it's recommended that you let the system manage the handicap index, but the committee and the club does have the ability to override that restrictive 5 hard cap and adjust upward if need be higher than the 5. But the adjustment, if you are going to adjust an index, does need to be 1 full stroke at a minimum and can be higher than 5 on exceptional circumstances such as an injury or maybe an illness of some sort. Again, there's no limit to how far down an index can go, but the system does restrict upward movement. So I mentioned that the 54.0 is now the max handicap index for both men and women. That's not to say that the competition committee can set maximum limits for their terms of competition for any given event. So what we see a lot out there and what we do at the SCGA is we have entry requirements. And you might have a maximum handicap index for entry. You can set what the max is for players. So, if you're having an event and you say, hey, you know what, no one's going to get more than 2 strokes on any given hole, so we're going to set the course handicap at 36. That's the highest you can have. And somebody might have a 44 course handicap based off of their index. What basically, if they're going to play in that event, they're not going to get the 44. They're going to have to play down to that maximum of 36. So again, just to remind the committee, the folks that are running tournaments, that they can have and set course entry restrictions and handicap maximums that players play to. And lastly, for the World Handicap System, we saw that the playing handicap is an adjustment based off of what format they're playing and how much they're allowed from their full course handicap in that event. So the USGA has some different recommendations for adjustments based off of different formats. And a real big difference is you used to have 2 separate adjustments, one for men, one for women. Now these adjustments are both for men and women. And again, these are just recommendations from the USGA. Obviously, the competition committee, the ones that are holding the event, can set those limits to whatever they want. Again, these are just recommendations from the USGA. A couple significant changes you can see here. If I'm going out and playing a buddy in an event or just a friendly match, the just one-on-one stroke play, you can see here that the adjustment is 95% of our course handicaps, not the full 100% course handicap against the other player. They're saying take 95%. So how many folks will do that? Probably not too many. They'll probably play their full course handicap when they're playing against each other in a friendly match or something like that. But you can see here that the USGA is recommending only 95% of that. Another big one is that 4-ball stroke play. I believe it was 90% for men and 95% for women. Now you can see here it's 85% that they recommend. So A little bit of a different chart, but again, these are just recommendations from the USGA. The committee can set their limits and set their allowances however they wish. So we do have on our website, SCGA.org, under the Learn section, there's what's called the World Handicap System Hub. And we have put this together with all of the changes that are on there. You can see there's 16 different sections, and there's great videos, tutorials that will help explain some of these changes in depth. So it's a great way to share this information with your members, with golfers. If you have questions or you want to do a little bit digging yourself, you can go through there and find out some of the information yourself through the website. So real quick, 5 things just to go over. The formula has changed. It's now 8 of your low 20. Just a quick review here. The course handicap now incorporates the course rating minus par calculation, so there's no need to adjust for players playing from different tees. The maximum score format for any given golfer is net double bogey. No longer equitable stroke charts are in play. It's par +2 plus any stroke you receive on that hole. That's the maximum score for everybody's handicap index. Handicaps are updated daily, so it's important that they post the day that they play. And again, we have some automatic safeguards in the playing conditions calculation, the exceptional score reductions, as well as those soft and hard caps that limit upward movement of one's index in a 12-month period. So real quick, with the new change of the World Handicap System, there's now been an update to the GIN system, which is now called the USGA Admin Portal. With that change, they've updated 3 ways that you can post a score. You can see there on the left, the GIN mobile app. So if you have a smartphone, golfers and members can download that app and post scores via the app. They can go online to gin.com and post that score. And of course, they can enter that score at the local course, at the posting computer kiosk. So different ways to post, making it convenient for golfers to get their scores posted, hopefully that day. Here's what the new system login looks like. So you do have new, if you ever accessed ginclub.net, again, it's now USGA Admin Portal. New system, new login credentials. So your old login will not work in this system. You do need to obtain new login credentials. For those that need access, you can have multiple users gaining access to this system. Again, it's a unique admin user credential. So if you were to log in under your credential, Bob Smith has his own credential to log in. And you can add other admins once you access the system under the account tab. Go down to the manage users and just add that new user, and they will receive an email basically stating they've been added as an admin. They can update their password by clicking on the link within that email. This system, if a lot of you have used it in the past, still has the same functionalities. It's where you go to do score maintenance, grab reports, your handicap index report for your roster and your members. It's got a great tools and resource section that has videos, tutorials, and frequently asked questions here. So you can, if you're unable to run a report, you can go into the step-by-step how-to and find out how to run that report. Again, reports are in the reports section. It's a great way to print out your roster with your players' index and course handicap from different sets of tees. You can schedule those reports to be emailed to you or to anyone else on a daily basis, a weekly basis, a monthly basis, or date specific. So you can just automatically have those emails in your email when you wake up to print out and post at your club. Again, here's where the reports lay. It's in the template section. And again, you see the schedule function and the view function over on the far right. But a lot of different reports that are useful for not just auditing your members' scores, but also just listing and having a roster of them as well. And as I finish there, John, that's all we got, and we're open for questions if there are any.
Thank you very much, Jeremy. Obviously a wealth of information in this subject because of the circumstances and contingencies of this game and our rules. There's a lot of situational questions. That's my segue, and I think we have more questions. And I wanted to say thank you to everybody for being on the Catalyst today. We have over 75 PGA members on this call today, and the biggest catalyst that we had prior to that was either Seth Waugh or Susie Whaley from the PGA, and I think we were around 50 for those two catalysts. So obviously the section and the membership knows the importance of these handicap changes. We need to make sure we have the right information, and we certainly appreciate you educating us today, Jeremy. First question. If a player posts a round after the fact, will PCC be a determining factor in the differential, because the weather will be different on the after the fact posting?
Right. So it's important that if somebody does not post their score the day of play, where the PCC may have been adjusting of all of the differentials that day, let's say they post a day or two later, they want to make sure they at least date that round back to the day they played, so that they do get the adjustment. Because if they post that round 2 days later to 2 days in the future, they're not going to receive that potential calculation adjustment if one was made. So if they do post at a later date, they just want to make sure they post to the correct date they played.
And a little more on PCC here from Kyle Scobie. Who determines a PCC adjustment, and what is the procedure?
Yeah, so there's no individual out there determining what the adjustment is. There's no USGA staff person that you need to contact and say, hey, it's been blowing 30 miles an hour today. We need to make an adjustment to all of our players' course differentials today. It's an automatic calculation based off of the scores that were posted at that course that day. So if you have, let's say it's blowing 30 miles an hour in the afternoon, but the morning was calm, all the players that day who posted are going to get the calculation adjustment if there's one made, regardless of those that didn't see the win. So it's simple. It's going to be simple in nature. You probably aren't going to see it all that often in Southern California, as opposed to those that play maybe in Ireland or where it's windy on a daily basis and a little bit more difficult playing conditions. But to answer the question, it's an automatic adjustment based off of scores posted. There's no additional requirements that need to be made by the golfer or the club in notifying anybody of the conditions of play that day. It's just automatic.
Can you talk a little bit about how the 85-90% calculation was determined?
Well, again, it's just a USGA recommendation. They've had those allowances in play for a long time. I don't know what the reasoning. I think obviously the reasoning of some of the adjustments was because now the course handicap and handicap index calculations are different. So again, you're only using low 8 of your 20 rather than the low 10 of your 20 with an adjustment of 96.96%. So I think because handicap indexes may lower a little bit based off of the only using 8, and the fact that the course handicaps have lowered, based off of the tees that you're playing and all that calculation. They've adjusted the allowances accordingly to make it as equitable as they can show in determining different players' abilities playing against each other. So, you know, if you look at if someone's a high index player, high handicap, you know, their scores are a little bit more erratic, and they probably have a little bit more higher scores than, let's say, a single digit index whose scores are probably relatively within a, you know, 5 to 10 stroke difference. So if you throw out two high scores, it's not going to affect the low index player all that much. It is going to affect the high index player a lot. So I think they're giving a little bit more in terms of allowances because higher index players are receiving less on their course handicap or their index.
Okay, and when a score is not acceptable for handicap purposes when played, I'm referring basically to the second question on the SCGA quiz. It says a score is not acceptable for handicap purposes when played A, in a foursome, B, in an authorized format, C, by the rules of golf, D, in a Stableford competition, E, with at least one player, or F, on a course with a current course rating.
So for a score to be acceptable in that question, the format of Stableford, that's an acceptable format of play, and one does have a score to be posted. Obviously, if you're playing on a rated course, that's acceptable.
So it's with at least one player then?
Right. So you have to play with at least one other player for a score to be acceptable.
Awesome, thank you.
You can't go out by yourself, play golf, and post that score is basically the USGA's rule. And that's not new. That's been in place for a couple of years. I think that was really from other countries. They were kind of making some changes in the past few years before we actually went through this World Handicap System changeover. But yeah, you can't play by yourself and post.
And then in terms of what's true about playing conditions calculation, it includes acceptable scores submitted by all players regardless of handicap index?
Say that again, John.
Is it true of PCC, is it true that it includes acceptable scores played by all players regardless of handicap index?
No, it has to be a handicap index of 36.0 or lower.
Very good. And for an 18-hole score to be acceptable for handicap purposes, a minimum of 14 holes needs to be played. That's still true, correct?
That is true. It's now 14. It used to be 13. Now it's 14 for an 18-hole round, 7 for a 9.
And we're approaching the end of the questions here. This is from Bill Christ at Pachanga. In terms of user friendliness of the SCGA portal, how do we obtain a new user credential for the admin portal? Because I have heard that the portal is difficult to use.
Okay, yeah, so unfortunately with this changeover, USGA has quite a few bugs that they're working out, so it's kind of interrupted the functionality of the system. We're hoping that they get all of that fixed here, obviously in a timely manner, because it's bringing a lot of questions and concerns to us, and our support team here is nonstop in answering questions, phone calls, and emails. But to get a credential, initially it was sent to the handicap chair listed at the club. But if you want to just contact us at the SCGA or contact me, my email address is jpitt@scga.org. I can go ahead and add you as a user and you'll have access once you get that email that the USGA sends when I add you and you create your password. So yeah, contact us directly or just shoot me an email at jpitt@scga requesting access.
Now, have there been any changes from Kyle Scobie here? Has there been any changes in terms of making short courses handicapable?
Unfortunately, we have not heard that there's been any changes per the USGA for short course ratings and short course postings. We don't know what the support will look like in the future, so we don't have any answers per what the USGA has given us.
Very good, Jeremy. Those are all the questions that we have for today, and our hour is up. On behalf of the Southern California PGA, we would like to extend our gratitude for your time and effort in educating the section today, Jeremy. Thank you very, very much for being here.
My pleasure, John. Thank you.
As usual, for all of the Catalyst attendees, the recording of the YouTube recording of this morning's Catalyst, along with a 10-question quiz, will be going out here shortly. Please take the quiz and return. Now, this is where we're going to change a little bit. Historically, you have sent your quizzes once completed to Sharon Kerfman. Going forward, we're going to be sending them to Brooklyn Addis at the section office. So once your quiz is completed, please email it to b.addis@pgahq.com. A score of 70% or higher will earn 1 MSR credit for attending this morning's call. The quiz in the email that I'm sending out shortly will explain all that as well. Want everybody to stay tuned. In 2 weeks, we have on January 30th, we have Dawes Marlott from PGA National that's going to be with us. Looking forward to him being on the Catalyst. Once again, thank you everybody for the strong support today. Like I said, we had over 74 attendees on the call, so obviously we all know the importance of this going forward. Thank you very much for supporting the Catalyst, and have a great day. Thank you, Jeremy. Take care.
Thank you.